So that brings on to April Gallup, and I want to go through her court case and in detail, if we can go through it in the time we've got left.
Sure.
Right. So
you've read through it.
I've got it in front of me. How did she start then? How did she? What's her background?
I don't know, exactly how it got started because she's just done several court cases, but I know about this the latest one. She was a worker in the Pentagon, and Andrew, be sure to, correct me if you have more details than I have, but just in general, she was a worker in the Pentagon. First day back from maternity leave, and her little baby doesn't have a security clearance yet. So you can't go to the nursery, so she's waiting to get paperwork for that, and so the baby's at her desk with her. And she goes to turn on her computer, and she pushes the start button on her computer, and just at that moment, there's this big explosion. She thought, oh, what'd I do? And that was the supposed plane. But she couldn't see anything because there's this opaque dust in the air, but she breathed. Anyway, she grabs her son and goes out to the hole in the building. And then she wants to sue somebody. Somebody's got to pay, And so she sues the airplane company for being planes or not planes. I don't remember. There's conflicting things. But this last case was about blaming George Bush and Dick Cheney. And then she had in that case, the way it was drafted was thermite in the buildings, in the towers. But she wasn't in the towers. She was in the Pentagon. So it was just idiotic to say it, had anything to do with that. Of course, there's no evidence. And Stephen Jones did not sign an affidavit for her case. He pretended he did, but he did not submit a signed affidavit for her case. He told her she's, free to use his online paper. And David Ray Griffin.
I thought she submitted his book as evidence.
David Ray Griffin's book she put in here, she cited, and David Ray Griffin encouraged her. I saw, some emails from him to April Gallup. He was encouraging her to file this case, but none of them signed an affidavit. So it looked like she's a wacky conspiracy theorist, just putting out nonsense stories, saying George Bush.
The only person, as I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, that submitted an affidavit from that crowd, there may have been other people that weren't part of what we might call the thermite crew, was the Danish chemist Niels Harrit. And Ralph
he's not an American. Yeah, he's not an American citizen.
Yeah, and if you read his affidavit, I haven't read it all and studied it in detail, but he more or less says, well, we think it might have been thermite that was used in the World Trade Center towers.
But we don't know if the thermite we found. Yeah.
Yeah. He said we think we might have found evidence. It was very much a kind of ambiguous language. Not very. They couldn't refer to a specific test that they'd done.
And even he states it on the Danish television that I've got that clip on my website where he says. We don't even know if the thermite we found was thermite that was used. No, we don't even agree what it was used for, if it was even used.
How much thermite did we need? Many tons.
Many. Yeah.
On this news broadcast, he said tons of thermite were used.
Many tons.
Yeah, did he say many? I don't remember.
Yeah, he said many tons.
Many, yeah, he really goes for it.
So, but again, as Dr. Wood said, for them, whoever was handling that case from, the legal submission.
Reveal, and then there's Cunningham, I think, was it? The other guy?
Gourley, was it?
No, Gourley wasn't there. It wasn't. It was.
He wasn't involved with it, was he?
Reveal, and then there was a question if he was even a lawyer. Apparently that came up, but then there was.
I see. So, but anyway, as Dr. Wood said, just to emphasise that point. The April Gallup's case revolved around what happened to her at the Pentagon, not anything to do with, because she had nothing to do with the World Trade Center and didn't, so it was like they probably, this is just a guess, but they heard about her case and that she was going to try and, I don't, was this a lot?
I'm letting you break it up.
Yeah, I'm losing you again. Hello?
Oh, okay.
Are you there? You're back.
Reese. Roots upstairs.
Okay.
Again, where did you lose me? What was I saying? I broke up.
Something about. I'm guessing you're about to say that she filed a case and they just piled on with this other junk.
Yeah, I think that was my impression that's they'd found out they were going to file a case. She was, and then they sort of tried to piggyback onto that. What they wanted to put in they knew really was not linkable.
Yeah, you're breaking up too much.
Yeah, you break it up.
I got a knot in there,
Yeah,
and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you can restart your...
The case is April Gallup versus Cheney, Rumsfeld, and Meyer.
Yeah, so it turned out to be nothing to do with the Pentagon. It was about, except she was saying they didn't protect her at the Pentagon, but here's what they did at the World Trade Center. So, she has no evidence of anything. It's all conspiracy theory, all speculation.
Absolutely.
Completely, 100%. It was all like, well, Cheney had to have known because, well, we know he knew. It was the truther story. So it really tested the truther story, but it got hung on April Gallup.
Yeah.
And then they were saying something about, I'm going to say it a little bit, kind of mock it a little bit here, but that the judge, I don't know the exact connection, but something like the judge in the case was the cousin's uncle's brother, whatever, some long distance relative of Bush. And so therefore he needed to take himself off the case. And they listed a whole bunch of other stuff. They're very fixated on that rather than on any evidence.
Right, I'm looking at the article that Professor Stephen Jones wrote on the 28th of April, 2001. Can we help April Gallup in her court case?
Yeah, that was a 9/11 blogger. He posted that because so it was dismissed, and then I think when they appealed it, they were essentially calling the judge names, that he was a low life for this, that, and and how dare you, and it was very derogatory. And if you're going to have a judge hear your case, you don't do that to a judge. Even in my case, when my lawyer filed a motion for reconsideration after it was dismissed, it was like, oh, Judge, about this, landing on the moon and whatnot, perhaps you had a misapprehension of the case, just didn't read it correctly. Could you maybe try reading it again? It wasn't like you low life, whatever. That is guaranteed to, you're shooting yourself in the foot to say that to a judge. And I don't know if they called them 4 or 5 letter names, but it was essentially that in April Gallup's case, that the judges did that, and the lawyers did that. And there was 3 lawyers mentioned, and one of them had nothing to do with it. They just put his name on it, so they let him off the hook. And it was these other 2 that they were talking about getting him disbarred for having done this. And so they fined them $15,000 for the court's time. We just wasted the court's time in filing such a case. Just name-calling of the judge. No evidence. They were told they had no evidence, and instead of coming up with evidence, they came up with name-calling.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So they tried to submit in Thermite, and if Stephen Jones was behind Thermite, he could have submitted an affidavit to back her up, but he didn't.
Right. And then with this, if the lawyer doesn't pay the fine, the $15,000 fine, then April Gallup has to pay it. Is what was they're individually accountable for that, or jointly. And so here she is getting really slammed, and Stephen Jones posts this thing like, poor April Gallup, is anything we can do to help her? Jones isn't saying, here, I will help her. And
let me read it out, and you can you can jump in anytime you want to make a point. I heard April Gallup, this is Stephen Jones' article. I heard April Gallup speak a few years ago and had the opportunity to talk with her when we were both participating in a conference in Irvine, California. April was in the Pentagon with her infant son on September 11, 2001, when the devastation occurred. There was no warning, but we know from Secretary of Transport Norman Minetta's testimony that Dick Cheney were following the progress of the jet as it came in towards the Pentagon, 50 miles out, 30 miles an hour, etc. There was no warning to April Gallup or her co-workers in the Pentagon, and the jet was not intercepted. See articles of in the Journal of 911 Studies. So
he's wanting people to assume there was a plane, and it's a magician's trick, getting people to say as though that's confirmed that there's a plane coming in and they should have warned April Gallup.
Yeah.
That's what
And
he's painting out, that she was about to hit by this incoming plane. That's what he's left the reader to assume that's confirmed. But the Norm Mineta story is obviously bogus, because the 580 miles an hour, that's approximately 600 miles an hour. For easy math, let's just round up to 600, and that means it's 10 miles a minute. So the plane's 50 miles out. Now it's 30 miles out. Well, that's 120 seconds between those two data points. So if the young officer is running in from the radar room, having a conversation with Cheney, and then running back out the door and down the hall to his radar room, then back to ask Cheney, there's not enough time. How fast can the kid run? If he talked nonstop to Cheney and didn't get any additional data, it would take 2 minutes to carry on that conversation that is described. So obviously the story is bogus, but it gets people to assume there's a plane.
But Professor Stephen Jones should know this, because he's a professor. This can't be an accident. It can't be an oversight.
He teaches freshman physics.
Yeah. Right, well, over 100 died in the Pentagon disaster. April suffered physical injury from the blast and had filed a lawsuit charging Cheney, Rumsfeld and Meyer and others. She deserves to be heard, but her case has been dismissed by Judge Demny Chin of United States District Court for Southern District of New York, and is now in appeal status before the Circuit Court in Connecticut. Can we do something to help April Gallup in her quest for justice and a fair hearing?
Why isn't Stephen Jones doing something? If he is proof of something, why isn't he doing something?
Because he's a leader. He just puts out the word, and he wants other people to do the
to get their hands dirty.
Yep. Did he get fined $15,000 for submitting this court case? Absolutely not.
He didn't even. That's why he didn't file an affidavit in the case.
Yeah.
But he led people to believe that he had.
Yeah.
I think Andrew, you know more about that with Ralph Winterod corresponding with Stephen Jones. Hello? Is Andrew there?
Hi.
Hi. You know about that?
I'm back now. Should be.
Oh, okay. That Ralph Winterod had corresponded with Stephen Jones, asking him where his affidavit is, because he implies he has an affidavit, but there isn't any. And Ralph downloaded the court case from the Pacer system, and there's no affidavit for Stephen Jones. Yet he states that on Nylon Blogger that he filed a court case. I mean, they filed an affidavit in the court case where he didn't. But then he comes up. Yeah, you go ahead and tell the story.
I don't remember all of that story, so you obviously remember it better than I do. I do remember, Ralph telling us, but I don't remember the details.
Yeah, he had sent me his responses from Stephen Jones that it's clear that Stephen Jones did not file an affidavit for the case. There's not on record. There's no mention. The numbers are consecutive of the documents that get filed, and but Stephen Jones likes to imply off the record that he submitted one, but he did not submit an affidavit in the case. But then here it is when April Gallup gets fined for the bogus appeal, which wasn't, it was told that she could then, after they're dismissing the case, or when they're dismissing the case, they said, well, you don't have any evidence here. We'll let you submit evidence if you can go round some up and bring them to us. And she didn't. And then so they did dismiss the case, and now they're appealing it. They appealed it without any additional evidence, and that the judges said we need evidence. And all they did was.
If we skip down the article, it says reasons for dismissal of Gallup versus Cheney. Plaintiff cannot cure their deficient complaint with affidavits. Note, plaintiff has recently tendered sworn statements, i.e. affidavits from two men who have published a lot of evidence about 9/11 fakery, about the fakery of 9/11, namely theologian Ray Griffin and physics professor Stephen Jones.
There were no affidavits.
There were no affidavits, but Stephen Jones is writing in this article, it makes it look like it's him and Ray Griffin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, what they did was she submitted his paper, in it, not an affidavit. I think she submitted his paper or something she could find online, and David Ray Griffin's book. But that doesn't, you know, she's supposed to be, kind of a whistleblower about being a victim there. It has nothing to do with what David Ray Griffin is theorizing.